Good afternoon, and welcome to the third in our series of the PMA-CIBC Summit Series programs. This is a very exciting one today, and we're so happy that you're here with us. My name's Andy Brethour, CEO of Brethour Realty Group, and we're so delighted that CIBC has been our main and significant sponsor of this program and our series of programs. There'll be a series of 8 of them, and we are now into our third. And the first 2 were just absolutely exceptional. If you missed those, they're available on YouTube, our website, Leanne McEwitt at Partnership Marketing's website. Let me thank our sponsor. I've done CIBC. They are fabulous. Reliance, Home Care, Homes Magazine, Westmount Project, and Build, of course, who's been a constant supporter of this program right from the beginning. That allow us to outreach to many of you who are out there. I'm very excited about today's program because I'm an old dinosaur as a tech junkie, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am for this august panel we have in front of us today. You're going to hear from our VP of Tech, Nick Easley, in just a minute or two. We'll introduce our 3 speakers more appropriately. But Matt, Yanky, and Simeon are all 3 are very, very highly qualified to give us a tremendous insight and understanding of where we're going on the tech field. My American friends tell me that they're way far ahead of us on tech, and maybe in some areas they have been. But in this COVID world, I shared a panel on Matt's programming, Matt Slutsky's of BuzzBuzz programming early in the COVID world in March that was about how are we responding. And I must tell you that now, 3 months later, the response in this marketplace has been absolutely fabulous. In fact, I'm enjoying it more. I think that from a sales perspective, it's actually a stronger interrelationship's been created with the consumer than we were doing before, and that we're spending more time with the consumer, understanding their needs, wants, desires, and the conversion to sale is quite remarkable, and the lack of rescission is unbelievably low. So what we're finding is that our efforts in the selling field online are actually more powerful than they were face-to-face, person-to-person in our history. And it's actually better for the consumer. It takes more time, a little more understanding, and that kind of thing. It's actually turned out to be a revolution for the better. And I know that you're going to hear from these 3 speakers who are going to tell you how great it's going to be, even more so going forward. Well, what about forward? This market's in an absolute full recovery. I want to tell you how delighted I am to say CMHC is completely wrong. Those projections on May the 27th of an 8 to 19% correction in price in Toronto and Vancouver and possibly Montreal, but in Toronto, Vancouver particular are completely off, way off, and that the market, in fact, has responded in a V-curve recovery on projects that we've opened in the last 3 weeks, has absolutely been beyond our expectation. We were very nervous, of course, and wondering where this was going and how it would happen. But the resale market in Toronto, I'll just use that as an example, of course, has doubled each month, April, May, June, double to 8,700 units in June. That's back to normal. Average annual absorption in the 90,000 range a year on the 10-year average. That's right on the normal level for June. It's higher than June of last year and 14% ahead in price, Mr. CMHC. 14% ahead in price, not the other way around. That occurred both in condo and ground-oriented housing. Yes, there's an elevator virus and there's a bit of a market response from the consumer after sitting for the last 16 weeks looking at the walls around him and wondering what I should be doing. I hate this place. I think I'm going to buy new, bigger, smaller, different, and they're doing it with a vengeance. And the projects we're opening, it's taking longer. It's taking longer to convert a sale. The COVID process, the tech process, even though it's swift on the tech side, is taking a little longer for the consumer to be feeling it, understanding it, and making those decisions. But those decisions are lasting and strong, and the response we've had is tremendous. The one great story of Toronto is inventory. There is none. Even in the resale market that came up to around 14,000 listings in June, That's 10,000 off the market of balance in the 24 to 26,000 range. So you've got very little supply. In the new house market, ground oriented and high rise, 2 to 3 months supply of product. There is nothing available. So even though there's lack of immigration, of course, at this moment, which is the cornerstone of our growth here, there's fantastic response from this market. Will it last? Absolutely. Is it a bit of a blip? Yes, it is. Will it go stronger than the next 6 months? For sure. And will it happen in this period where we might level off and be a little cooler as we get into the depths of winter? Probably. But we are in a full state of recovery with a very confident consumer taking advantage of buying opportunities that are really strong. So how do we make this thing work? How do we take this COVID environment and actually take advantage of it and run it more smoothly and more effectively? Well, you're going to hear from 3 fabulous experts in this field of how to improve our business relationships, both with the consumer and with our client. Let me introduce to you first Nick Easley, who is our VP of Tech, and he's the one who is really tuned to all areas from our PMA perspective. And of course, with these 3 gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, who will introduce each one of these speakers. Now, there's a Q&A on your bottom of your Zoom page. If you've got a question, just type it in and we'll get to you through the program or towards the end of the program during our Q&A period. So stay tuned. Here's Nick Easley. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy, and welcome everyone to the Tech Summit, a third in our PMA-CIBC series. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicholas Eveleigh, Executive Vice President of Business Development and Chief Technology Officer here at PMA Brethour Realty Group. I am thinking of changing my last name. I've known Andy and worked with him for 22 years, and he insistently calls me Easley. So I think it's about time that my fellow PMAers will get a good laugh over that. But we'll have to look at changing my name to make it easier. Andy thanks some of our sponsors, and I just wanted to reiterate that. A big thank you to Reliance Home Comfort, Build, Aurea, Homes Magazine, Westmount Protect, BuzzBuzzHomes, and also for our event producers, McEwitt Partnership. Leanne today is behind the scenes with her team watching, looking for your questions and ensuring everything runs smoothly here for us. Andy mentioned as well, don't forget at the end of our session today, 2:30-ish, we will have a draw for 2 $50 gift cards for lunch, courtesy of CIBC. And with all that being said, I'd like to welcome our 3 excellent speakers today. First off, we have Matthew Slutsky. Needs no introduction for our GTA viewers here, but he is the co-president and co-founder of BuzzBuzzHomes. A background in land development, Matthew possesses a wealth of knowledge on the inner workings of new development industry. At BuzzBuzzHomes, Matthew focuses on building the brand and marketing the platform to both the public, clients, and stakeholders. Secondly, we're going to hear from Yanky Li, co-founder and president of OpenHouse AI, which has offices in Calgary and Toronto. Yanky has spent most of his career balancing business with technology, background as a chartered accountant, and project management professionalist. He's led many successful projects across the world, leveraging technology and design solutions to solve business problems. And third panelist, Simeon Garratt. Simeon is co-founder and CEO of Spark, a software company dedicated to bridging the gap between sales and technology for new home development projects. He spent most of his career, early life in Asia, 16 years in China and 6 years in Malaysia after graduating from NYU. Yeah, he's currently in Vancouver and has an ability to speak Mandarin and Cantonese fluently, which helps in the development of his real estate business career. Welcome, guys. We're going to get started today with the same format that we've had the last 2 sessions. Each speaker will have 3 to 5 minutes to tell us about their companies and what they have to offer. And then we'll get into discussion for about 15 minutes and open it up to Q&A. First up is going to be Matthew. Matthew, what's up? I hope you had your nap today. What's on your mind? Tell us what's going on.
Hey, Nick, thank you very much. If you're not familiar with BuzzBuzzHomes, we are North America's largest online listing of all new residential developments, so all new condos, townhomes, subdivisions. We are a discovery site focused on getting purchasers or new home owners in contact with developers, letting them find what they're looking for. I'm not going to take up too much time. Hopefully you're familiar with BuzzBuzzHome, but we do have a bunch of really interesting new products that we launched since COVID started to help our featured clients out. One of them is the ability for users to actually set an appointment directly with a builder through BuzzBuzzHome, rather than just sending a request for information. They can actually set an appointment. The other is we are now integrated with Matterport. So if you have Matterport 3D renderings, you can do a full walkthrough directly on BuzzBuzzHome. Alternatively, if it's not Matterport, we can also click through to your virtual walkthrough. So that's two really new cool products that we quickly launched once COVID started, trying to give our clients some more options. Generally speaking, we've seen since April 25th, that's kind of an exact date, COVID seems to have ended on the demand side. We saw, when COVID first hit, traffic to BuzzBuzzHome, as well as leads coming out of BuzzBuzzHome, dropped immensely in one day. Then on April 25th, we started to see us going back into growth mode from the previous year. And I was just looking at the numbers before we started. Right now, our traffic over last year is up 55%. Our leads are up 110%. So we are starting to see really strong growth and strong demand again from the consumers.
Thanks very much, Matt. Next up is going to be Yanky. Yanky Li, go ahead, OpenHouse AI.
Thanks, Nick. So I also have a bit of a slideshow to show everyone. So I'm just going to go through that quickly. Okay. So just a little bit about us. So we're OpenHouse AI. And basically what we do is we use technology to turn web traffic into sales. This past January, we were able to speak at one of 6 master sessions at IBS. Big honor, generated a lot of buzz there. Before I go into a little bit about what we do, I want to bring your attention to the digital transformation of a map. You know, when printing technology first came out, we had paper maps. And then when we had satellites, GPS came out. And now we all use Google Maps. But Google Maps is only possible because of AI technology. So what is AI technology? It's basically just a fancy way of saying using data to predict what will happen, or if you want to create a future, what do you have to do now to make it happen? Okay. So that's really what it boils down to. So only with AI could Google Maps do things like remind you to start traveling, find your best route, offer personalization, suggest a detour, and predict when you need traffic reports. So to put it in a real estate context, you know, everything is personalized now when you're using your smartphone. And back before the internet days, you would probably, let's say there's a couple goes to a new home, the real estate agent will probably read their body language and behavior and say, maybe this couple likes this home or doesn't like this home. But nowadays it's all happening online. So, but that behavior's, it's still there, it's just that it's online. So how do you capture that information? So really what we do is, we have an AI-powered engine that bolts onto a existing home builder's website that gives the home buyer this personalized experience, only showing them what's relevant. And the competitive edge is basically they find what they want in 10 clicks versus 50 clicks at a competitor. Now, at the same time, we're helping them generate all this behavioral data that is essentially analogous to having a focus group on everyone all the time. And so all your business decisions now become data-backed decisions. And so just quickly, people find it fast, shorter sales cycles, real-time market research, more appointments, more foot traffic, higher conversions. And that's the competitive edge. Okay. And happy to be in touch afterwards and talk more. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Yanky. And now we're going to hear from Simeon Garratt. Simeon, how's the weather out there in Vancouver today?
You know what, today's actually the worst day we've had in a little while. It's been super sunny and now we're cloud covered, but no rain, so I can't really complain. It's actually not too bad. So I actually have a little bit of a slide presentation as well, just to kind of walk you guys through. Obviously, I could, talk about Spark without showing you anything, but I think it'll be a little bit easier for you to understand kind of what we do. I can actually show you my screen. So, I mean, Spark essentially, I mean, we're based in Vancouver. We are a sales, marketing, and management platform directly built for the new development world. I mean, I spent most of my life prior to Spark working in new developments, traveling between Asia and North America, pre-selling homes to investors, essentially. And Spark kind of spawned out of that idea of working with a lot of developers to understand what the needs were and using that information to then build a platform that was specific to them. So what Spark has turned into essentially is to fully digitalize new development real estate and bridging the gap between real estate and technology. For reference, I mean, Spark currently, we're in about 80 cities. We've been around for about 8 years. We've got over 1,500 projects on the platform, and about $100 billion of new development real estate has been transacted through Spark itself. In the pre-sale side is predominantly where we live, single family, townhome, multifamily, high rise, depending on the city, depending on the geographic region. But that does also fall into the lease up side as well. I mean, especially in the US, lease up and pre-sale are very, very similar in the way that they're transacted. And then the people that use us obviously are the project marketing firms, the brokerages, developers, or the builders themselves to manage everything from an infrastructure standpoint. Going down, I mean, you might be familiar with a couple of these clients. I would say I tried to put a couple of our Toronto groups on here, groups like Minto and Metropia, Milbourne, etc. I would say Toronto is actually one of the last markets that we've actually branched into. We got sucked into the US very, very early. And that was where the primary focus for us was. But this is actually, now that Toronto has, exploded through the new development world over the last, 5-10 years, that's really where we're now seeing a lot of traction. Now, as far as Spark itself, I mean, we started as a full CRM. That then quickly bridged into digital contract, digital transaction management, custom reporting, inventory, pricing, floor plans, and mass email marketing on the back end. Going down, I mean, a brief sort of overview of what that looks like. I mean, company portfolio access, being able to view all your developments at every time, what's sold, what's not. CRM, of course, which is the core of it, managing your prospects, your leads, the buying process, and walking people through that system. Inventory, availability, allocation management, of course, all of your pricings, all of your floor plans, integrating into all of your digital touch screens, all of your online web presence forms, etc. Digital contracts, which actually now, because of COVID, has become one of the primary leaders inside Spark. I mean, there's a lot of people that have jumped into this market to build platforms for digitizing the transaction space. We've been doing this for years. Working directly with DocuSign. I think we were the first DocuSign partner in the new development space. And then going down to, of course, mass email marketing, which is really the core, something like Constant Contact or MailChimp built directly into the platform itself. And of course, at the very end, obviously, the reporting that sits behind all that. How are you making decisions, giving you the data, tracking every piece of the process from start to finish, and really going from conception to completion. And we engage with developers at a very, very early stage whenever they have their first online presence. And we take that all the way through to they're literally closing on those units. And just to give you a bit of a landscape, I mean, I know the majority of you are, from the GTA. This is kind of where we fit into the marketplace. So you can see we've got groups like Eveleigh and Blackline and Sailfish. We actually do work very closely with a lot of these groups in a lot of ways. But the way that Spark kind of differentiates itself is it kind of sits in the background as more of the infrastructure behind the entire process and plugs and plays with other groups along the way. The biggest competitor we would probably actually see would be somebody like Salesforce. But that's going to be a custom implementation that you're going to spend a long time kind of going through and likely a lot of money. So really, this is, again, there's a lot more competitors in this space or even groups that we work with, but I just kind of to lay the landscape a little bit. So that's Spark. Awesome.
Thanks very much, Simeon. While we're talking about CRM, actually, I am going to throw a question to you. In your platform, do you have a way of handling tearing on any warranty issues, colors? That's often one of the biggest questions we get when we look at that CRM package for new homes and builders.
Yep, for sure. I mean, so the way that Spark has been built from day one has always been very open and very customizable. I mean, Toronto, again, was one of the later markets that we entered. But, you know, we deal with Terry on at every single project that we've done there. And the flexibility, you know, taking things that we've learned from New York and Miami, Houston and London, et cetera. I mean, realistically, the new development process isn't that different in most major cities. It's just a different form and a different process behind the scenes that, that people are implementing.
Excellent. Yanky, I had a question here for you. AI is a very general term, and trying to understand how your AI funnels people more closely at what they're looking at. Maybe you can explain in maybe more simple terms of what you would compare yourself to, or how that AI is eliminating some of the decisions for potential purchasers.
Yeah, so when we speak of AI, you know, our company was formed by seeing an opportunity in the real estate space. If you talk to other industries, they'll say, "Oh, this is common technology." In real estate, it's fairly new. So, you know, Netflix and movies, Amazon retail, right? Google and advertising. We've just brought it to real estate and kind of changed the shopping experience so that, you know, the website, the online presence of a home builder now listens to the home buyer and then presents only what's relevant to them. And so that kind of dynamic and personalized experience, it's been a growing trend. And I think it's about time that, you know, real estate gets into that as well. And one of the benefits of being kind of seeing other industries do it first is that you can see what works and then implement that at your business.
So just to follow up to that, just to understand, so it's more of a predictive technology in that if I were to say visit a builder's website that was using your platform would predetermine from maybe my age, my social profile, and other factors what product I may be interested in. So it weeds out what I may not want to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what pictures are you looking at? How long are you looking at? Which what are you gravitating towards? So we keep an eye on people to give them what they want and make it easy. And especially like the trend is people are now shopping on mobile, right? The phone, you know, it doesn't actually have a lot of real estate on it, right? So if I have 66 or 100 different floor plans, it's important that the first 6 you show resonate with that person, right? And that increases your chances of them converting, online conversion, and that increases the foot traffic coming in.
Excellent. Matthew, I got a question here for you. Just shortly after COVID hit and we had the shutdown mid to late March, we've seen roughly a 200 to 300% bump in BuzzBuzz leads specifically. We weren't seeing those, you know, necessarily with builder direct registration pages. Is there something different that you guys did? Is there an explanation to why that happened?
So I think that there could be a few different answers to that. First off, we're always bettering our product and we're always bettering our data. So to us, data is king. So we always want to ensure that we have the best quality of data, and we're constantly figuring out new systems to put in place to ensure that we have the best data, so we have the best user experience. So as our data and user experience gets better, we end up sending more leads. So that's just kind of the natural evolution of BuzzBuzzHome. With regards to COVID hitting, I think there's no doubt that pre-COVID, let's say BuzzBuzzHome was hitting 75% of the new home shopping experience. The other percentage was actually going to sales centers first. I mean, that was the traditional way. People would see an ad, they'd go to a sales center, and they'd go find out more information. Well, I think the younger generation and most people now go directly online. They see an ad or they hear about a project, they'll go online. But some people still do go directly to sales centers. So pre-COVID, we were missing that chunk. Post-COVID, sales centers weren't open. We were now getting 100% coverage on people looking for their new homes, which could increase people sending out what we call RFIs, requests for information, or leads from BuzzBuzzHome.
Excellent, thank you. Question here for Yanky. How does the data your AI provides to the builder differ from Google Analytics?
That's a great question. So keep in mind, Google Analytics came in many years ago, and it was a one-size-fits-all kind of solution for any business. I'm going to say like super-powered analytics incorporates Google Analytics and also a lot of the base data that your government collects, Metro Study collects, and then we incorporate all the behavioral data from your website. So all the analysis that you're doing, it's not a high-level economic way of seeing it. It's people in your sales funnel. What are they doing? What's your segmentation like by community, by floor plan or model? So that depth and that level of analytics has really not been seen in the industry before.
And I guess analytics aside, you're trying not to only provide the analytics, but beat the analytics, be predictive so that they're focused more to what people are looking for as opposed to what did they click on and spend the most time on. You're trying to get ahead of Google Analytics with your platform.
Yeah, you know, one of the ways that our client base uses it is for land planning as well. So when they can see who's coming in, what are they interested in, they can plan for, well, what land should I buy? What product should I build with what features aiming at what segment? And funny, when COVID hit, our client base was able to see from a segmentation standpoint, who's left the sales funnel, who's been disengaged, and who stayed. So they were able to adapt quickly and move forward.
Excellent. Question for Matthew. BuzzBuzzHome, what's next? What's new? What's going to be exciting coming up here? Do you have any inside information for us?
Yeah, so I think we're really pushing through in the US right now. So we're in about 15 cities across the United States, and we're continuing to do a bigger push into the US. So that's very exciting. As I mentioned, we are also constantly changing kind of the algorithms around how we update our data. So we have a team of researchers, and their whole job is to update data. So we're changing our kind of protocols on how we update data to even better our quality of data. So that's really exciting. Kind of that's slowly being rolled out over the next probably 6 to 8 months. So again, data quality will continue to increase over that time. We're also working on some really cool partnerships. One with Simeon, that we can integrate better with CRMs, with inventory management systems, to allow for people to do more stuff on BuzzBuzzHome.
Excellent. You mentioned US and breaking into that market. Brings me to a great question for all three of the panelists. Given the differences between the Canadian and US market, how do you see the technology used differently in the respective economies, and is one more advanced than the other? We'll start off with Simeon.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked that a lot, and our client base is kind of split, 60-40 US Canada. So we see a lot of what happens in the US, especially. I would say the biggest differentiator between the two markets, for one, is transparency. So in the US, data is much more open. Pricing, floor plans, availability are much more accessible to the consumer or the agents, whereas in Canada, that's much more guarded. Developers don't want to give out their pricing. They don't want everybody to know what every unit costs. I mean, in New York, you have to file an offering plan, which literally states the price of every single unit. And if you want to change the price, you have to file a new plan. So I think that, the differentiators, which one is more advanced? I think Canada is a leader in new development technology. And we've seen a lot of companies come out of Canada and break into the US as far as new development goes. And Toronto being a large driver of that, of course, being one of the top new development markets in the world. But I would say that the adoption of technology in the US is quicker. And the way that they use it is much more full. So, again, in very, very hot markets, it's really hard to launch and further technology because the technology sometimes becomes a byproduct of the fact that you just have so many people coming through a sales center. If I can sell out an entire building in a weekend, I don't really need a CRM because I can just let people walk in the door and sign up. And so, the US, I think, is definitely taking the technology and expanding on it greatly and really, really digging in deeper. But a lot of the technology is spawning from Canada. So that's kind of how I would break down the two.
Excellent. Let's move over to Matthew.
Yeah, I first want to kind of reiterate Simeon's point on transparency. You know, as I mentioned before, data quality is so important to us. We have a team of researchers, but we also get from builders. So builders give us feeds of their inventory, their pricing. In Canada, it is like pulling teeth getting a feed from a builder. Whereas in the US, like all the major builders just give us feeds. We have real-time pricing on all the major builders in the US. It's just commonly, they want their pricing and plans to be available in more places. So they syndicate it. So there's no doubt that that one is a huge one. But when it comes to kind of the experience, I think in 08, 09, when things turned in the US and Canada, it was very short-lived in Canada and very long in the US, which meant that in the United States, builders there were spending a lot more time on leads and how to nurture leads. Whereas in Canada, we rebounded so fast that we just learned how to really hype projects. So there's no doubt in Canada, we are by far the leaders in marketing and hype building. And in the US, they're by far the leaders in actual user experience and customer experience. And I see there was a question that someone asked, are you seeing any trends in customer experience that customers want more of? Well, yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that is customers want to be heard. I mean, the way that the current system works is someone sends a lead or requests information on a project from a builder, that builder puts it into the registration system, and 6 months later they get an e-blast. Meanwhile, there's a whole VIP process going on the side. That's a really bad customer experience for the user. And I think that as the market changes, especially on the low-rise side, we're going to see builders are going to have to figure out how to better their actual customer experience better, how to actually nurture leads, how to deal with leads properly. Because again, in Canada, it's just not being done.
Excellent. Yanky, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, you know, about 90% of our client base is based on the US. You know, in general, I do see that home builders in the US tend to be much more open to try things. And I think, you know, this situation with COVID has even accelerated that, that digital transformation, making things working remotely, even using Zoom for the first time. Companies are changing and adapting. So I do see the openness there, and I agree very much with Simeon's points with transparency and also that openness to try new things. So that's, you know, that puts Canada in a good place to say, hey, it works for these guys. Let's try it out now. So yeah.
I would
sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Just kind of the importance of what Yanky is doing. If someone requests information or sends a lead to a builder, and you want a good customer experience, I think what Yanky's platform is doing is adding so much depth for a sales team to be able to respond to that user with really relevant information. You know, rather than just a lead, you know, if a lead comes through BuzzBuzzHomes, it's going to say their name, their email address, the price they're interested in, the square footage, whatever. But it doesn't give that whole background on the person, their age, their demographics, and so forth. So I think what Yanky's doing, again, coming back to that question of customer experience, I think once builders start to kind of take hold of OpenHouse, it could really change the way that we deal with online leads.
And even from our perspective on the sales side, you know, during COVID here, when you're doing Zoom meetings or you're doing virtual meetings, having a platform that will show you predictively, these are the floor plans that they looked at, these are the floor plans they should look at, it really narrows down and helps us seem more customer service oriented. So it definitely helps out that way. Yanky, that brings up another question that we had here. Data source, you know, you may not be able to tell us exactly where you're getting your data source from, but given the scope of data that you need to collect to predict these things, give us an idea of where you're tackling that from.
Yeah, so you know, we're looking to fill that gap and help businesses be their data science team, essentially. People don't want a lot of data and then having to crunch that and spend days, compiling meaningful reports. So we do all the heavy lifting for everyone. We combine over 30 different data sources, and then we enrich that with the online behavior for the people coming to your website. And once that's enriched, you have a data set that is summarized and actionable. And that's what we do for home builders. We do all the heavy lifting. You guys look at it, press one button, and this is what you should be doing to change your business. So that's always been the goal, to make it as easy as possible for the home builder.
Excellent. And Yankee, while we're still chatting there, what's the single piece of tech that you found that makes the biggest difference in your own day-to-day life outside of your own software? What is it, that one thing that's made a difference to you?
For me, it would be cloud technology. Cloud technology has given rise to many businesses. Imagine trying to buy a physical server to show thousands of movies to millions of people, and I'm talking about Netflix, right? So Netflix is also on the cloud, and so being able to scale and have that convenience, it's a really big opportunity for businesses to take advantage of that. In the old days, it used to be big companies have money to build their own data centers, like telecom, oil and gas. They have millions and billions of dollars to build these things. But with cloud technology, every business can essentially have their own data center.
Excellent. Simeon, given so much airtime has been given to pivoting to tech because of COVID, are tech providers in this space, what's the reality out there? Are we really going to bridge this gap where we can get to a point and say, Alexa, buy me a home, find me something in an area? What are your thoughts on that?
I think when people talk about Alexa, buy me a home, what they're really talking about is the discovery process, which I think ties directly into what Matthew's doing with BuzzBuzz. The actual buying of the home is still something that is not really covered underneath the technology side yet. The banking systems, the legal, the insurance, those are all the actual core pieces that you need to literally buy a home. And so I think COVID has really exposed the fact that people are doing things online, which is primarily driven by discovery. You can find a home online, you can write an offer for a home online, you can even sign a contract online, but is that really buying it, or is it actually when you complete and have everything digitally backing behind that? I remember, 10 years ago, I was in China, and I was taking WeChat deposits for condos in hotel rooms. This is something that even now people are saying, wow, this is brand new. We're able to do a digital contract, but we were doing that 10 years ago. And if you look at Asia and you look at a lot of these places, people are buying homes online, but the infrastructure of the governments and the banks are really the major holdup for actually being able to purchase something online. And I really don't think we're that close to it yet. But I also don't think that the buyer really wants that. I don't think the buyer needs to buy a home online. I think they can find a home online. I think they can talk to somebody online. I think they can walk through the process online. But do I really need to right now click a button, buy a home, and have all my money wired? I just don't. The customer experience around that, I know there's a question that Matthew answered briefly on that, but the customer experience around that is the demand isn't actually there. It's around discovery and the integrations and making the data more accessible versus it actually being about buying a home online.
Excellent. Great point. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, we have a lot of experience in that. About 4 years ago or 3 years ago, we launched a product called Daypack, which was an inventory management system, POS system, that also allowed for online sales on BuzzBuzzHomes. We were the first kind of online marketplace that allowed for sales directly through BuzzBuzzHome. We stopped taking on customers to Daypack about a year ago. We still have customers who use it as an inventory management system, but we're not doing the online sales portion anymore. I think the market just isn't ready for it. I think the consumers on the kind of investor level would be most ready for it. But I think ultimately, the builders are hesitant to use it. With your PMA, you guys know, the realtors have a special relationship with the pre-construction realtors, and builders do not want to interfere with those relationships. So they're hesitant to do something where they can sell directly online to a consumer. That was a lot of the feedback we were getting. But also to Simeon's point, I also don't think that an actual homeowner and end user wants that experience. They especially now with what's going on in the world, people want to actually talk to somebody. They want to actually communicate with someone, and that relationship is the key. To actually do online sales in the Alexa buy me a home kind of idea, it just takes so many things, and it needs to take so many things into consideration. One, you need a database like BuzzBuzzHomes. So Alexa buy me a home, it needs to then know every single home that's out there. So it needs a centralized source for that. So you need an actual discovery site to actually turn into a marketplace. And then you need to have something like what Yanky's doing to add on this artificial intelligence to be able to say, okay, you're gonna like this home or not. And I don't think the public is ready for that. They want that hand holding. They want to actually speak to people. They want to actually converse with people. And as Simeon mentioned, like, none of this stuff is new. None of this technology is new. It's been around for a very long time. Selling a home online is very easy. You can do it with DocuSign. You can do it. There's a million online tools that can do it very cheaply and effectively, that takes into account the human element as well. I know Leanne put out a whole report on it, on kind of, I think it was a 6 or 8 step process to allow you to sell online with that human element, which that's what I think is key. And that's where I see the market going right now, as opposed to an actual buy now on BuzzBuzzHome button.
Excellent. Yanky, I want to hear what you think about this. When I wake up in the morning and ask Alexa to do my morning routine, and she tells me what the news flash is, what the weather's going to be like, is she going to be telling me that there's a house in my area that I need to look at, or it's time for me to move because my house is too small?
You know what? That can happen. Actually, things are heading that way. So not only in other industries is companies using technology to present, what they think you like, but it's also giving you reasons why. So I don't think we'll fully get there where you actually pull the trigger and buy the home online, but I think using technology to do a lot of the lead nurturing, the self-education, the discovery themselves, using technology to do that, and then having that smooth transition to a person to close it, so that they're 90% of the way already, and they come to a salesperson, they say, I kind of know what I want, I narrowed it down to 2. Let's pick one of these, right? So a lot of opportunities in lead nurturing. And I also think technology in general is going to remove the friction points of people on that home buying journey. And so not only technology to make it for sellers to sell easier and better, but also make it easier for home buyers to buy, which is different. So
I think if I could actually just add one point to that.
Sure.
With I would say the largest developers that we work with in the US, the guys with the biggest budgets, I mean, their number one goal is always to create a seamless experience that blends the online with the offline. And I think that that's really where the market is shifting, is look, you're used to having a sales center experience. You're used to being able to walk in and talk to somebody, but now you have to do that through the web. So how do I really make that sales center offline experience exactly the same as my online experience? The human element to that is really the key. But making it so it's not like, oh, I got to click a window, pop open a Zoom call, and then go over here on my phone and download another app, and then go on this site to send my e-transfer for whatever. It all has to integrate, and all has to be seamless. And I think that's really where the key to this is the closer you get to making it seem the same online and offline, that's going to be the online home buying experience, is really blending those two and trying to remove the human experience out of it. I think really, does a discredit to what these builders are doing, which is building homes for people. People want a home, yes, investors as well, but even on the investor side, I mean, the management and the tenant experience is the other side of that equation that we're also seeing. And there's a huge amount of advancement that's happening on the tenant side as well. So both of those, I think, would probably be, to Yanky's point, is making that experience on the technology side very seamless.
Well, and all the technology lends itself to that process. I mean, during COVID, we had some builders that developed a process with us where instead of doing the virtual tour online, we flipped it where the virtual tour was the agent is online and the end user or the purchaser is still going to a model home. They're ringing a Ring doorbell. We're unlocking the door remotely for them, turning the lights on remotely. They're going into a sterilized environment with a TV and a video camera, and the agent's there talking to them, about their process and about that home. And right there, you can digitally sell them a unit and print it out for them or email it to them. And with Yanky's platform on top of it all, you may have some insights ahead of time on what they were coming to look at.
I would say, though, there's a big difference there between high rise and low rise. So with low rise new construction or pre-construction can be very much like buying a used home in terms of there's probably going to be a model home available that someone can actually walk into. You can do something like an enter now where they can actually go and feel the product. With high rise, there is no product. I mean, there's a sales center, which is all kind of glitz and glamour. There'll be nice display boards, but there might be a model suite or a kitchenette or something with a whole bunch of upgrades, but there's the information you can get online is very similar to actually going into a high-rise sales center. So I think that it's much closer on the high-rise side to be able to use technology so that you don't need an actual sales center. I think there is a example, someone asked the question, Kent, do you feel the return to traditional way to go to sales offices as more of the economy opens back up? We saw yesterday, Center Court launched their largest project yet, 199 Church. And to add that human element, they actually did it in a drive-in movie theater. And they did this whole, they did this kind of online, offline, in person, but at a drive-in. It was a really unique experience that they created to get people to understand the product. From the site of the drive-in movie theater, you can actually see the site, the actual building site. They did some great documentation on how does the sales process actually work. They made some nice videos about the actual process, again, using DocuSign. So I think that there's a much better chance on the high-rise side of going more online and not as sales centery than on the low-rise.
Excellent, great answer. Simeon, tell us from your experience, how Canada versus US lead nurturing versus database. What are you seeing as the biggest differences there, and how does that translate into customer service?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would split Canada into two categories. I would say Toronto has its own process for that, and the rest of Canada is definitely very separated. I mean, what we've seen from most builders in the GTA is that leads are not that important. Deals are very important, but we have groups that have thousands and thousands of leads that never even get contacted because they only have 300 homes to sell and they have 2,500 people in the database. So the lead nurturing in Toronto that we've seen traditionally hasn't had to happen because of the demand in the market. If I would compare the rest of Canada and the US, I think that generally, and this is probably a general statement as well, but in the US, people are very much, this lead is mine, I need this, no one else can have it, and I'm gonna close this sale. In Canada, it's much more of an open shared experience traditionally in the sales teams. So you're seeing people work on leads together, work on deals together. Whereas in the US, we have settings literally built into our system that if a lead comes in, it only goes to one person and nobody else can see that lead until it closes. And so the competition, and again, East Coast, West Coast definitely differs in that way as well. But in New York and Miami and Chicago and a lot of those cities, Midwest /East, leads are very, very, very important. And the experience is much more of a retail style experience where you're having a hand holding, they get to know you, they tour you around, you go to New York and they'll rent you a car and they'll drive you around, and it's a very big deal. And they invest a lot more money and time into these people because they also want the repeat buyers. And it's also not as big of a straight investor relationship.
Great. Yankee, what do you think?
Yeah, with leads in the U.S., like they take them as very important because it's visibility into your sales funnel, right? There's a lot of competition, and one of the easiest things to do to fix a leaky sales funnel is actually to get a CRM and actually manage that, have formal processes in there. With companies that are constantly selling out, I'll just put the question out there, then, are we not making enough margin? Are we putting money on the table if we're selling out too quickly as well? So what's that optimal pricing as well? So that brings up more questions of like, what should we be doing? So yeah, I would say in the US, definitely leads is important, following up is important. And also I think people are starting to also keep in mind the lifetime value of a home buyer. Someone who buys a new home, first-time home buyer, if you can determine that there's a 89% probability that person is married and starting a family in 3.5 years, are we actively engaging them at the 3-year mark as a lead, and presenting all the personalized messages, content, and product to them to engage them? Do we have these mechanisms in place? Because that is a future lead. So just some things that, where the technology is moving towards.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? Are you seeing the same thing, lead nurture versus lead capture?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, in the US, they've really mastered the online lead experience. There's a huge industry in the US about online sales consultants, which that doesn't exist in Canada. Like I know that there's a few builders in Edmonton that tried it. I actually tried it with a site in Ontario, but it's an incredible process where someone sends a lead. It's not just going into a registration system. It's actually going to a person, and their entire job is nurturing this lead. In most of Canada, if you take a look at leads, someone sends a lead, maybe the sales center will respond by email once. Hey, how are you? Well, here's some information. We're launching on June 24th. See you later. Whereas in the US, they try it's like a 6-step process in the first 7 days. It's an entire process that's been created to actually deal with leads. And it works. I mean, they really mastered how to deal with online leads. And there's kind of 2 parts to that. One is actually converting the lead into a sale. But the other is the actual experience that this person has. Whereas oftentimes in Canada, it goes into a registration system, they end up selling out. That's a terrible experience for that new home purchaser. And if you're a small builder and you only plan on doing 1 project or 2 projects, it doesn't matter. But if you're in this for multi-generational and your brand really matters, that experience is extremely important because you want them buying at their next stage of life. You want them to remember this incredible experience they had with you. They got a good deal, fair price, they were happy, they were well taken care of, and when they're ready to move on, they're gonna end up buying from you again. Tridel has really mastered that. I mean, they created an incredible experience. They spent a lot of time in the early 2000s on their customer service, on making sure there's really low defects when people do their PDIs. They do all this stuff to ensure a great experience so that they get repeat purchasers every step of the way. And I think that experience to a new home buyer is completely missing in the Canadian market. I think there's a lot of room there for us to grow. And there's a lot that can be done, but it starts with the lead and how you actually nurture that lead. I
often find that when we look at projects in the US, they're, any given time 2 to 3 years ahead of us as far as the technology. I mean, you touched briefly, Matt, on an online widget to answer questions. I mean, we're just starting to look at that here in Canada, and in the US, they've moved on from that. So I think you're exactly right.
Thing of answering a question. Like, again, BuzzBuzzHomes sends out thousands of leads a day. It is amazing how many people email us 2 days after they sent out a lead saying, hey, I want to buy this 2-bedroom and den south-facing unit. The builder never got back to me. What should I do? And these are people saying, listen, I'm trying to get the builder money. I've sent them saying I want a unit. I even know the specific unit I want, and the builder's not responding to them. That is a daily thing that our team has to deal with and has to try to help these purchasers through, because they don't respond. I mean, I always tell builders, like, if you get a lead from BuzzBuzzHome, respond in 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be a huge, lengthy process, but like, just respond with something. Let them know that you're there, you're listening to them, answer their questions, and start building that relationship right away.
So, I mean, that leads into Simeon. Let's let him jump in here quickly for a second. I mean, from BuzzBuzz, there's got to be an API into your CRM that can do what Matthew was just saying and respond within that 5 minutes. Is that something that you guys are working on?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the conversation with Matthew and I started. It was how do we make this experience better? I mean, we were obviously representing the builders on this side. Matt's coming from the lead perspective. And I think that the closer that relationship is, the better it can be. If I can send you a lead that automatically says, hey, this lead's from BuzzBuzz, they registered on this project, this is what they're interested in, and I've got an entire follow-up schedule that's built around that. We can also feed direct inventory and availability to BuzzBuzz from Spark to basically give people access to know, hey, if I'm registering and I'm really interested in this unit, is it actually available? Because that's really key too, presenting accurate information. So, the closer, and this is why I mentioned earlier, the integrations I think are so important is, the technology is only as good as the people that use it, but the technology has to work really well with other technologies as well. And the more pieces that you can integrate with, the more powerful the technology becomes. And that's, again, creating that seamless experience from end to end, from the very first time the lead registers all the way through to what they complete on. I can even tell, Matthew, that, hey, those 15 leads that you sent, 16 or 12 of them bought, right? And we can build statistics around how to better nurture and do those type of things. And so that's where I think, our working relationship has come from. But again, I mean, there's a lot more that's going to go beyond that, but that's definitely the right place to start.
A question from Byron here. This is going to be for Simeon and Yanky, and we'll start with Yanky. Is it possible to use your app in the resale market?
There's definitely other verticals that our technology can be applied, resale being one of them. As a company, we're focused on the home building segment for the time being, just to be really hyper-focused and deliver value for certain customers. But other verticals, we're certainly exploring that as well as opportunities come.
Excellent. Simeon, how about Spark? Is it something that can be used in the resale market?
I mean, we have a lot of people that register that want to use Spark for resale. We very, very rarely will let that happen. The experience is just not as good. I mean, you can really try and you can force it. I mean, honestly, I'll recommend a lot of other apps for that specific purpose. And but we do get a lot of brokerage teams that'll come through and say, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. It kind of fits with my MO of where we're trying to go. But what will actually, the direction that Spark is more relevant to a brokerage team or even a resale team is if you're a resale broker and you want to pitch new development, you want to go in and say, I don't just want to sell one home. I want to go pitch on that new project that's down the street. Spark is actually a good tool that you can use to help pitch a developer to say, hey, look, I have an entire system in place that allows me to give you these reports, give you this analysis, manage your inventory this way. And so we actually, we call it like the move up broker, where they're going from selling homes to pitching and selling buildings. And that's very, very common for us in the States. So yes, you can. I wouldn't, but it's definitely not set up for, managing individual pieces of inventory on the resale side.
Excellent. Yanky, is there anything specific standing out in the digital space that's converting well during the discovery process? Is AI leading the way? And how are the older demographics reacting to the AI?
Yeah, so generally, if you see like a spectrum, the older generation does tend to like the traditional way, going in, building a relationship, talking to a salesperson, and touching them on home and all that jazz. But the situation that the world is in right now actually has been forcing them a little bit to adopt that technology. So if I can't go in person, where am I going to find that home? And so COVID has kind of delayed the purchasing, but people still have the intention to purchase. So people have been going online and have been essentially nurturing themselves online. And an important thing for a home builder is like the online experience is so important that it has to be flexible, and it also has to adapt to all the different device sizes and all the different versions of phones out there and devices. And so it's important that home builders keep up with that as well. That's something that we help our client base keep up with so that they never have to worry about that. So if Google comes and says, we're changing the standard of technology, this is how it should be, we adapt to that right away, and that just rolls out to our client base.
Excellent. I know we're short on time here, but I had one last question here, and then we've got one for Simeon, and then we'll wrap it up. But post-COVID here, we've seen some great resilience from our industry, and quick shifting from a lot of the developers and builders into an online presence and adapting to this new reality. Do we see a return to what was our normal, to the technology kind of always being second nature, something we talked about but didn't really adapt into our day-to-day? Let's start with Matthew.
Yeah, I think that unless there's a vaccine, we're not going to get back to the same way that it was before, especially on the high rise. Well, on both sides, the high rise kind of super launches where you have 2,000 agents in a stadium and line up like that. Those days, I think, are going to have to change unless there's a vaccine. But I do think that I think this has pushed builders to start looking at technology in a different way and how to use technology in a different way. That it will hopefully stay for good. I think there's a lot of great things that are coming out of this, and the way that builders are actually and sales companies are interacting with users or potential purchasers. So I'm hoping that a lot of what we're seeing is going to stay, even if things do open up and kind of turn back to normal. Builders have traditionally always shied away from change. If one system was working, they just stay with that system because why change? Why ruin a good thing? So I think this is forcing builders to adopt some new great technologies. And again, these aren't new technologies. Like just the ability to actually sign these agreements with DocuSign instead of having to print out 5 copies of these huge documents. Like, I don't know why builders pre-COVID were doing that. Like DocuSign was available. So I think there's a lot of great that can come out of it. I think from the home shoppers experience, I think they're going to start to see that most of the information, a lot of it can be found online before having to go to the sales center. So I think anyway, we'll probably have to could start to see less spend on sales center build outs. So I'm hoping this is pushing builders in the right direction. And I think the days of our old ways are going to have to change. I can't see going
Excellent.
back.
Simeon, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really just been an accelerant. It's not, this was all stuff that was coming anyways. COVID has just sped it up. We look at other markets, other places in the world, none of this stuff is new. It's just the value has shifted, right? Technology always been there, but the line item, 5 years ago, it was hard to find a builder that had a line item in their budget for software. Right now it's becoming more common, and now with COVID, it's like a must. It's like, that's actually my first priority now, is how are we going to digitally deal with this? And so it's really just shifted the priorities and the value of where these platforms sit. It's not meaning that the platforms are necessarily any better. It's just that they have a bigger focus and they're actually going to be used properly. I mean, look, again, you can have the best system in the world. You can put Spark in your development, but if nobody uses it properly, it's not going to be good. So the priority, and it has to come from the top down. It's accelerated it, but it's not. Are we going back to the old way? I think there'll be a blend for sure. But this is really where stuff is going, and it's going to stay like that.
Yanky, what do you think?
I think the trend with technology is, keep in mind, technology has been tremendously decreasing in cost, which also makes it much more accessible to even the small home builders out there. So it used to be where, big companies have a lot of budget to buy expensive softwares to do deep analytics and a lot of research and things like that. That's not the case anymore. Technology is the great equalizer. To quote Rupert Murdoch, the world is changing very fast. Big will not beat small anymore. It will be the fast beating the slow. And so now that, it's even the playing field, even small home builders who do, like in the US, like 50 homes a year, they have access to the technology to compete. And I think that's very important to keep in mind.
Excellent. We have one last question, then we're going to wrap it up, and Leanne's going to throw it back to Andy, I believe, for our draw. Simeon, last question is for you. How is Spark bridging the online and offline experience? Is there different areas of the sales cycle and focus there that you're looking at?
Yeah. So I think this kind of works how we do things internally at Spark, as well as how our clients do things. I mean, if we look at Spark, one of the most important pieces of our business is our customer success group. It's great to say, here's a piece of technology, go use it. But if we don't onboard properly and we don't, properly map documents and we don't walk people through and handhold and share the experience on how to get the most out of the tech is essentially worthless. And so that online offline experience really comes with, the integrations that we do. It's the actual, the touchscreen integrations. How do we actually blend our experience with the technology? And that's, in my mind, where that online offline from Spark's perspective comes from. And then with our customers, obviously, we're sharing that same experience. So a developer is able to say, well, I can use technology to go this far, but I still got to be a person, and I still got to have a relationship with this buyer. It's not just about emails and follow-ups and text messages. So, I mean, we're looking at this across a huge variety of builders, really, really small to some of the largest in North America. And again, the closer we can get to that online offline experience, it's about the sharing of how you use the technology versus it just being like, hey, this technology has a lot of buttons and a lot of capability.
Yeah. So let's expand on that a little further. Yanky, when we talk online, offline, what is OpenHouse AI able to do with an offline experience? Is there something you can lend to that?
Yeah. So, our goal is always to get, in the end, get that home buyer, get that lead in to talk to a person. So the online experience has to nurture that lead to the point where they're ready to engage that way. And, home buyers, they don't like to, when they're on their journey, they don't like to start all over. So if they spend hours online, they're doing their research, they're getting educated, they're narrowing down what they want, wouldn't it be great to talk to a salesperson that kind of knew you did that already and didn't start the conversation all over? Hey, what would you like? Who are you? And then you got to go through this discovery that you kind of did online already on your own. So that transition, I think, is really important. And, we're doing our best by, giving that salesperson the data that they need to help make that sale happen after, so that you can get to know the home buyer, you can get to know their needs, their wants, before they even walk in the door. And so that makes that transition much more smoother.
Excellent. Question for you, Yanky, at home. Is it Alexa, Google Assistant, or HomePod? What's the flavor?
None of the above for myself. These past 2 months, I've done a lot of sitting at home, and I don't need another device to turn off the lights for me. I'll gladly get up and turn them off myself. I'm
the opposite. I haven't had anything up until now, and Alexa's where I landed. Simeon, what about you? Do you have it in your personal life? Do you use it at work or?
Oh yeah, I got Google Home everywhere. All my lights, everything. I barely even have to.
Excellent. Awesome. Matt, what about you?
Alexa, depending on where in the house I am. Otherwise, that I'm back to Siri for kind of simple stuff. If I'm outside of range of one of my Alexa pods, I don't have any of the Google Home installed. Although
Excellent.
related devices that don't work with whatever. My home setup wirelessly is a real mismatch.
Awesome. Well, we're going to pass it back to Andy to do the draw. I wanted to thank you guys for taking the time. I mean, we could talk tech for hours. And certainly if any of our other attendees have any questions, fire them over. We'll try and get them answered best we can. We're always here for you. And I did see a couple questions about where to get our previous summit series and a recording of this. There was an email sent around with the YouTube links for the previous ones. There will be an email sent around later on this week or early next week with this recording, and it'll include a link to our previous summit series as well. So with that being said, thanks everybody for their time, and Leanne, we'll pass it back to Andy.
Thank you, everyone. That's fantastic. What a great session. I can't tell you how much I learned. I've made so many notes beyond belief. I have Google Home, and I love it because she does everything I ask her to do. She never talks back and loves me. It's like, this is remarkable. What a better perfect relationship can anyone have? Actually, the stimulus is better when I have at least a modest argument. Thank you so much to all the speakers and to you, Nick, in particular, for putting this together. It was a great session. I want to say that I am impressed that every one of these tech guys has a really funky office. Oh my God, it's going to make me change. I'm so ordinary. This is like, look how cool those offices were. That is very fun. And let me thank CIBC again, because without them, this is impossible. Reliance, Homes Magazine, and now Noon Homes has merged with them. That's a great new storyline. We'll talk about that in our next session. Westmount Project Build, and of course the fabulous Leanne McHugh at Partnership, who is in the background of this, and Chris Markovic from our office, who have been the movers and shakers to put this together and keep it rocking and rolling. We're back again August the 6th with a legal panel and looking at some of the legal issues, which changes in the APS, the elements of property management impacts of COVID. We're going to talk about the changes in some of the new rules that have been passed on by CMHC qualifier and how that's affecting the legality. FinTrack, how to do that on a legal document and pass it through on DocuSign. So a lot of interesting stuff in the next session. Let me do a draw now, as I'm supposed to do, and send you on your way. This is for a fabulous lunch provided by CIBC, which gets delivered, I think, quite directly and personally to you. The first winner is Sharan Sadhu, or is it Sadhu Sharan? Sharan Sadhu, oakwindmarketing.com. Congratulations, Chardin. Appreciate you participating today and being that winner. And our other winner is Anthony Spadafora of Lasani Homes. Mr. Lasani himself was a participant in our previous panel just a few weeks ago. So Anthony, congratulations to you. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you on August the 6th. And we'll be back then with another star-studded panel and a great program. Thanks, Leanne, very much for your participation back there. It's off and out. Till next time, happy selling.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Great.